taking advantage and using the attacks to advance their racist, anti-Arab agenda.
I'm sorry, I had the video up now. Sorry,
let's start in the West Bank, as Sander suggested we should, with Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. Smotrich is a hateful anti-Arab bigot. He's a far-right politician in the Netanyahu coalition, and he has broad powers over civilian issues in the West Bank. Haaretz reports that since October 7th, more than 170 Palestinians have been killed in clashes with Israelis across the West Bank. Now, way back in 2005, when Israel was withdrawing from Gaza, Smotrich was arrested by the Israeli security services, the Shin Bet. Smotrich was arrested under suspicion of planning terrorist attacks. He was held by the Shin Bet for 3 weeks. He was suspected of planning to block major public roads and damage infrastructure. That's according to Yediot Ahronot, a major Israeli newspaper. In 2019, the former deputy head of the Shin Bet called Smotrich a, quote, Jewish terrorist. That's according to Israel's Channel 13. Now, Smotrich denies those claims. He stated he was proud of his role in opposing Israel's expulsion from Gaza, quote, noting that he was freed without any charges being filed against him, according to a report from the Times of Israel. Now, Bisharat writes in Haaretz on Monday of this week that Smotrich, quote, sees the disaster that has befallen the country as an opportunity to plunder the West Bank. The settlers, who share his messianic ideology, have begun to carry out their plans to purge the area of its Palestinian population, unquote. As with this scene you see of armed Israeli settlers, zealots, extremists, harassing Palestinians, wreaking havoc in the West Bank. And then there's the Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir. Quote, immediately.
Welcome to the game, CNN. You finally caught up, huh? Isn't it funny how a bunch of uneducated college dropouts at RBN was telling you guys this stuff way before CNN was? But media ranks them as more reliable than us. We are the radical, far-left media publication in America. This is extremely shocking. I have never seen a CNN segment go at Israel this hard my entire life. And this person who posted the video, when we get back to it, he said CNN, perhaps the most shocking CNN episode I have ever seen in my lifetime. And trust me, Jake Tapper is just getting started, so I'm going to let it play here before we wrap up here.
Immediately upon hearing of the criminal Hamas attacks, Bisharat writes, Ben-Gvir was calling for a sequel to the 2021 Arab-Jewish riots in order to devour what is left of Israeli democracy, unquote. This includes armed militias, subordinate to Ben-Gvir, wandering the streets of Tel Aviv, and, quote, the thought police, hard at work, arresting civics teacher Dr. Meir Baruchin for posts on Facebook opposing the Israeli army's operations in Gaza and for showing compassion for Palestinian suffering, unquote. Of course, Ben-Gvir's first targets, he writes, Israel's Arab citizens who have been harassed, indicted, and arrested. Quote, not only is the blood of human beings being spilled, so is the blood of Israeli democracy, or what is left of it. Around it, a crazed band is dancing joyfully. Ben-Gvir, quote, has declared war on the Arab community, and not a single word of criticism has been uttered by the Israeli mainstream against this shameful spectacle, unquote. Yesterday, Ben-Gvir posted this video bragging about how Hamas terrorists are receiving, quote, the most stringent conditions. 8 handcuffed terrorists in a dark cell, iron beds, toilets in a hole in the floor. To which Israeli citizen Gil Dickman tweeted to Minister Ben-Gvir, quote, Itamar, I'm begging. My cousin is now in the hands of Hamas. He was kidnapped, his cousin. Your words about the dark dungeon, the hole in the floor, the handcuffs, and the humiliation put her in real danger. Your every tweet is a match. that burns the hearts of our families. I'm begging, Itamar. There are Israelis there whose life and death are in the hands of your tongue. Please stop, unquote. But thinking about such things does not really seem to be Ben-Gvir's way. He is an openly racist,
You got to notice, this is what I just covered in the stream. Israelis are realizing that their government don't give a shit about them and their hostages. As I mentioned before, if you wanted to free the hostages, why wouldn't you accept the ceasefire? If you continue your bombing of civilians and civilian infrastructure, wouldn't I give Hamas, the organization that you guys deem to be the greatest evil ever, wouldn't I give them more incentive to kill the hostages? You guys see how Zionism robbed the ability of people to think? So Hamas, the most evil organization that ever existed, the new Nazis according to Zionists, you expect them to keep them alive as you bomb their infrastructure if they're so evil? Do you guys see the contradictions here? But let me continue the video.
Arab member of a far right party, anti-Arab member, really seem to be Ben-Gvir's way. He is an openly racist, anti-Arab member of a far right party that Netanyahu joined with to form his coalition. Ben-Gvir's vile views, we should know, are no surprise. Until 2020, Ben-Gvir had a portrait in his home of Baruch Goldstein. Baruch Goldstein is a Jewish terrorist who murdered 29 Palestinian worshipers in the 1994 Cave of the Patriarchs massacre. In 2015, Ben-Gvir attended a notorious, quote, wedding of hate in the West Bank. At this wedding of hate, the murder of Palestinians was celebrated, including the murder of a Palestinian infant. It's sick. Now, in January, it seems like 100 years ago, but it was only 10 months ago.
So, is this the part where you realize, Jake Tapper, that Israel is everything that they told you Hamas was? Everything they told you Hamas is that Hamas celebrate dead Israeli babies. They want us dead. Hamas will want us dead. Meanwhile, Israel actually kills people. They have Jewish terrorists actually killing people. 200 dead in the West Bank, dead because of Jewish terrorism. But you guys think that Israel has the moral high ground over Hamas? Hamas, who actually have a legal argument to arm resistance against their criminal apartheid state, you guys think Israel is better than Hamas? You guys know how ridiculous that is? And Tapper, he won't ever say that, but he coming to the realization that, man, nigga, I'm supporting some Hamas shit myself.
I asked Prime Minister Netanyahu about these two anti-Arab racists, these extremists in his government. You have appointed some individuals, controversial figures, not part of your party, including ultranationalists Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir.
They joined the Likud. I didn't join them.
Right.
And I direct policy. I'm governing. I've got my two hands on the wheel, and believe me, it's going to be a good direction.
Smotrich just called himself a fascist homophobe.
What?
He suggested same-sex marriage is like incest. The former deputy director of Shin Bet said he was a Jewish terrorist, that he tried to stage an event when the Gaza pullout was going on. And the other day he was saying that he was putting out these horrible conspiracy theories. You must have seen this about the Shin Bet and the assassination of Rabin. I mean, these seem like rather extreme individuals.
Yeah, well, a lot of people say a lot of things when they're not in power, and they sort of temper themselves when they get into power, and that's certainly.
But isn't that the criticism of Hamas? Now, for what he's saying is a lie, by the way. They still say crazy stuff when they're in power. But yeah, Luckett officials that called for carpet bombing Gaza. There was people in the Luckett party that called for a completely annexing Gaza, was something that even the most extreme Zionists like Anthony Blinken in the United States opposed. They oppose Israel annexing Gaza. They want to keep it as an open-air prison. but the Luckett Party, the extreme far-right party that Benjamin Netanyahu run, not only did they call for annexing Gaza, they called for essentially having a genocide. And they said that the international community is too unfair and that we need to kill as many Palestinians as possible in order to have a one Israeli Jewish state. That is the stated goal of the Luckett Party, but they keep telling you how extreme Hamas is? Then they tell you that what Hamas believe? They say that we must be down with bombing hospitals and bombing kids because Hamas say the same thing that officials in the Luckett Party says in Israel. Do you guys see how this is ridiculous? I don't even have to argue against the premise, because I will actually push back against the premise that Hamas is anything like Israel. There are people that was in Gaza, like Max Blumenthal, Dan Cohen, Jewish people. Dan Cohen explained how Hamas protected him because he was Jewish. So if I want to get real in the weeds with you guys, I will reject the premise that Hamas is anything like Israel, based on what their 2017 charter says as well. But even if Zionists lie so much, they have a lie within a lie. You guys saw it with Finkelstein and Max Blumenthal. You can't even take time to bury the lie within the lie. Sometimes you gotta set the premise and then explain how even with their premise, they're still full of shit. So the premise that Hamas are radicals, that we must justify the killing of babies and kids because they're so evil, that premise I reject, because you guys see Israel like that. But even if your premise was correct, doesn't Hamas or anyone have the right to kill Israelis based on what Luckett officials say? So they take the most extreme statements of Hamas, because I'm sure, like any organization, they got extremes. I'm sure there's someone in Hamas that says something about Jewish people that I wouldn't agree with. I'm sure that's just the reality of humanity. But what the corporate media and the Israelis and what the United States does, they take random statements from Hamas people and say, oh my God, look how evil Hamas is. We must bomb babies because they're so evil. You guys seen CNN's odd takedown. It's an odd takedown. You never seen CNN and BBC go after Israel like that. But despite everything that was shared in this video, despite Israel and the United States being isolated on the world stage, you have one of the most ardent Zionists in Congress for the last 40 years who is remaining stubborn. Remember how the progressive left sold out Palestinians under a devil's bargain that they're going to get progressive domestic agenda that never came? They voted for John Fetterman selling out Palestinians because they got the idea was that you get good domestic policy, but let's sell out Palestinian people. Let's sell out black people in exchange for doing that. But they're not even getting that. Remember how Joe Biden said that Xi Jinping was a dictator? Meanwhile, Xi Jinping is a dictator. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is still strongly defending not having a ceasefire, even though 80% of your own party want a ceasefire. You have 33 Congress people, including the first Jewish congressperson, that came out in support of a ceasefire. Here are the lists. Thanks, Prim, thinking for this. Here are the 33 members of Congress that back a ceasefire. You have 80% of the voter base in the Democratic Party calling for this. 33 of the most progressive in the party that calling for this. But despite that, Biden is still strongly defending the idea of not having a ceasefire. But you guys think Biden thinks that Xi is a dictator? This is what a dictatorship looks like, fam. You guys know words mean stuff? Words have meaning. This is what a dictator is. Someone who dictates policy despite what anyone else says. Joe Biden issued strident defense of refusal to call for ceasefire in Gaza. The United States president argued Hamas has said it will not stop attacking Israel and said he is mildly hopeful of a hostage deal. I don't know. Maybe one of the reasons why Hamas won't stop attacking Israel because they stole their goddamn land. Maybe one reason why Hamas won't stop attacking Israel is because they got 5,000 Palestinian prisoners. And I know the quote that Biden is talking about. One of the quotes that came from one of the Hamas leaders is, we won't stop attacking Israel until we get all our hostages and prisoners free. So Israel attacked Gaza because Hamas stole hostages, and that's bad. But now Hamas saying they won't stop attacking Israel until they get all the hostages. Now that's bad. Does it sound like people who are in the right? When you have the Democratic Party that says peace in Ukraine benefits Putin, when you have the Democratic Party and Joe Biden that's saying a ceasefire benefits Hamas, why is it that every time that there's peace talks, it benefits your enemy? If you constantly find yourself on the wrong side of peace, you are the terrorist. You are in the wrong. Good news, at least Biden's fucked, but shows how diehard Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden as are Zionists, which is why it's completely absurd. I've seen right-wingers that pretend that Joe Biden is not doing enough for Israel. Jesus Christ. Name one senator that's been more pro-Israel in his entire life than Chuck Schumer or Joe Biden. They are the two leading Zionists in our government for decades. Every Israel atrocity Joe Biden has already been complicit with. So to me, it never made any sense for Arabs to ever support Biden. But thank God it's over now. In Michigan, where every vote counts, Arab Americans are turning away from Biden. And not only that they're turning away, and I explained this before, they're actively campaigning against Biden to get as many people not to support Biden as possible. So not like, oh, we quit. And not like nihilism. Oh, no, they're organizing to get people outside the Democratic Party. The chant was Biden, Biden, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide. We are witnessing the end of the duopoly era. We're going to enter an era of the third party, the multi-party system here very soon because the Democrats are toast. I have a personal theory that one of the reasons why the right wing lost their mind, one of the reasons why they completely abandoned free speech, the reason why Trump had to immediately come out and say that if he's president, he will ban all Muslims and deport Palestinians, even though he don't have the legal right to do that, because they play a game, bro. Like, Democrats fucked up so bad. They lost so many young people that Republicans have to compensate because Republicans are supposed to be the extreme party. So now you got Trump saying, we will deport all Palestinians. You got Republicans saying that we got to ban speech. They are struggling to find a way to compensate for how badly the Democrats fucked up, if that makes sense. So now the Republicans doing their job have to double down and become even crazier. Why do you think they become crazier on the culture war? Why do you think they obsess over trans people and all this bullshit now? Because they had to overcompensate for how horrible Biden is. We told you first at RBN that the anti-woke shit that the right wing will not land as well as people think it will. And what happened? Republicans fucking botched and choked away the last two elections. They were supposed to have a wave in the off-year election this year. The same way they're supposed to be a red wave in 2022. They didn't because Republicans engaged in the culture war when all they had to do was be anti-war. They had to just pretend to care about the workers, but instead of doing something basic, they punted the ball and became an insane culture warrior party because they had to. They had to do that because if they actually did market themselves as a pro-worker, anti-imperialist, serious party, then all of a sudden the Democrats would take massive, massive losses, and they can't have that. The duopoly only works when there's an even scale. President this year, Republican, Democrat next time. Republican this time, Democrat this time. That flow is crucial to how the duopoly works. Do you guys think it's a coincidence that it's been that way my entire life? We had George Sr., a Republican. Then we get a Democrat, Bill Clinton. Then we get a Republican, George Jr. Then we get a Democrat, Barack Obama. Then we get a Republican, Trump. And then we get a Democrat, Biden. That is very, very important. And that's my personal theory on why the Republican Party abandoned free speech. They abandoned being anti-war because they got to help Democrats because of this. They got to do everything they can to turn out as many people. And trust me, I'm happy about it. I'm happy whenever anyone leads the duopoly. But they got to rack up their rhetoric to help the Democrats not completely get their ass beat. And that's what they did when they choked away 2020, 2022, and 2020 and this last election. But my analysis is it won't help them in 2024 because of this, because of the Israel thing. But who knows? Who cares about whether my prediction right is on electoral politics? So